Howdy, and welcome to the Lost Rider podcast. It's an honor and privilege to address you in the capacity of an interviewer, reporter, and media member. Too many modern media outlets have forgone the integrity and responsibility required of credible information sources. What you will receive here are straightforward discussions with legislators, agency leaders, biologists, engineers, doctors, and countless other experts that have the answers to questions often circulated as kitchen table issues. The title Lost Rider may be thought of literally as well as in the metaphorical sense. While there has been the instance that I was momentarily a little turned around at night in a wilderness area, the idea of being a lost rider in life, well, that fits most folks at some time. These renderings are coming to you in the form of the 25-year-old radio program, The News from the Camp House. It still airs every Saturday morning at 6:30 a.m. Central Time on KULM 98.3 FM out of Columbus, Texas. The original intent was to relate outdoor topics to the general public. Immediately, it was found that all issues are relatable to the outdoors and that people are people. They all play a role and they all have a vested interest. It's this program's desire to answer common questions about how the world works, how it will operate in the future, and what's the holdup? So please listen, enjoy, and never hesitate to contact us with more questions and feedback. Good morning and welcome to this weekend's edition of News from the Camp House. Listening post to the Texas Sportsman Association, this is Herman Brune. This weekend's edition is also brought to us by Shaw's Bend Social Club. Shaw's Bend Social Club, country club of folks who don't have a country club. All right, tell you what. We're here. We've got a guest with us this week. He is the Republican candidate in the November election for House District 85. Now, he is Mr. Dennis Geeseman, and he has replaced the incumbent. We just saw that happen. It doesn't happen a lot. So often an incumbent will get in office, and it is just, you can't get them out of there. You can't blow them out of there. And you just wonder how some of these people manage to stay in office. Well, that's not what happened in House District 85 this time around. The gentleman who was in there was in for 2 terms. Folks were not happy with the way the Texas House has been run. And Mr. Geeseman ran for that position, and he unseated the incumbent. We have him here today, and we're going to talk about a little bit about what are we going to expect in this next session of the legislature. So, you're Mr. Geeseman, you are fully aware of Austin. They've been calling you. You knew what you were up against. You beat the odds, and I guess one of the first questions is, do you see Austin turning, or what do you think? We call it a swamp. We call it, there's a lot of problems in Austin, budgetary problems, a lot of stuff going on. I'm going to just let you give me a little rundown, then I'll ask a few more specific questions.
Okay, sure. It's good to be here again. My nickname has been Goose ever since I was a kid, so I'm always happy folks refer to me as Goose Geeseman, because I've been Goose Geeseman since I was a kid, and throughout my time in the military and high school, college, people didn't even know my first name was Dennis, but I was Goose way before Top Gun, even though I was a fighter pilot in the Air Force, and Goose worked great as a call sign in the Air Force. But I'm still waiting for my royalties from Top Gun. I'm probably not going to get any of those. But anyway, what I know, we've always heard about the Washington, D.C. swamp. And I think I got a good taste of the Austin swamp, and there's one there also. I was just amazed at how much money is going around the establishment and what I call the Uniparty over in Austin. And they call it the Incumbent Protection Program. And I saw that. So just for a little house race, I was basically self-funded. I had $2 million put up against me from the other incumbents and from the big lobbyists in Austin. So the reason I think I pulled this off is because I early went out and connected with the grassroots and the incumbents after they get up to Austin with all the big money and large names whispering in your ear. They kind of lose touch with what's going on at the grassroots. So he didn't see it coming until he had a poll probably in December where he said, oh my gosh, this Goose guy could be ahead. So it went ugly negative. So if you've seen a lot of mailers that were very ugly and negative, that's the reason it turned out back in December until the election. But I had enough of a foothold in the grassroots that it carried through, and I beat the incumbent by almost 15 points.
Okay, so now we're going to get to Austin. You've got some really established senators out here close by us that have been there forever, and there's a few. Who are you going to look to? I mean, one of the biggest problems was Burrows in the House, Speaker of the House. And I think that's one of the things people expect to see changed. I'll give you three things right off the bat, is they want to see the speaker change. They want to see property taxes, something done with property taxes. If we're getting tired of hearing about reform and nothing happens. They say just get rid of them. And then I think one of the things that's going to come up is going to be, what do you call it? One of the things that I expect to see more of is talking about term limits. I expect to hear more about that because Austin has become too entrenched.
I agree with the term limits. It really seems like after about 2 terms, the folks up there in Austin start to lose touch with what's going on at the grassroots at their district. So I've signed on with a support for term limits. Now, what that's going to be, actually picking a number, how many terms for a senator, how many terms for a rep, or how many terms for a statewide elected office. My thoughts would be normally, especially for a statewide office or a senator, be 2 terms, maybe 3 terms, because for a rep it's only a 2-year term. But I totally support term limits. Let me go backwards here on property taxes. I think out of the knocking on doors, and probably between me and my campaign manager, we knocked on close to 5,000 doors, and then we hired some other folks to go out and knock on another 6,000 doors. So I think we were really plugged into what the people were thinking. And probably the number one thing in knocking on doors was property taxes. Mm-hmm. Folks that have lived in their house for a long time, that feel like either with insurance or in property tax rates, they towards the latter part of their life, they feel like they got to sell it just to they can't afford to stay there any longer. But then on the other side, that also presents I think a terrible barrier for the younger folks getting into the housing market, and that's and getting a home for your family. That's part of the American dream. And if the younger folks don't see a pathway to the American dream, I think we got a big problem here. But right now, what they've tried to do is with exemptions, squeezing down the amount that they can tax your property. But I think with all the amount that we've put into exemptions, right now we're up to like $51 billion every 2 years that we put into squeezing down the, some people call it compression, squeezing down the property taxes that are paid. And then with the surplus that we've consistently been having due to oil and stuff, drill baby drill, I think we have plenty there to, along with the idea of moving the maintenance and operations off of ISDs into the budget to pay for that, and then and basically make anybody's homestead taxes down to 0. I think we could do that in 1 term. What was the third thing? The first thing?
Oh, we were talking about Burrows, eliminate changing the House Speaker.
Yeah, that's kind of the uniparty establishment, I call it. I think I've always said that back in the first time that George W. Bush was elected back in 1994, I think it was, that was the first time that a statewide race, all the statewide races went Republican. And there was a need at that time to reach across the aisle and get along with all the Democrats. But the left has moved further and further and further to the left, that reaching across the aisle right now to compromise with what's the rump of the Democrat Party, I think is a mistake. We got to stick to our conservative values that we have out here, and that's what I think Speaker Burrows was trying to do. He reached across the aisle and impeached to get all the Democrat votes to impeach Ken Paxton. Then he reached across the aisle with all the Democrats to get himself elected as Speaker of the House. Mm-hmm. And then he reached across the aisle to write all the rules for how the House is going to be run, which essentially, even though that they did not put Democrats head of the main committees any longer, they were all the vice chairs, and they had the ability in the House rules to kill any conservative legislation, never let it get out of committee. So I can understand as conservative as Speaker Burrows tries to portray himself, I don't think we can elect him as Speaker of the House again.
Right. Okay. No, Burrows was hand in hand with Phelan. And, when Phelan stepped aside, Burrows just took over, and they were cut from the same cloth. Is there any type of unity going on, any calls being made, anybody else that's being pushed forward that, sees, say, yeah, this should be our guy. This is the guy we need to all get behind?
There's the head of the Republican caucus is Dr. Tom Oliverson, and he's got some good experience. He could be a good choice. There's another guy that's been in there several terms now from the Collins County, just east of Dallas area, Brent Money. I like him. So those are two guys that I look up to for potentials for Speaker of the House. They're not as hardcore dyed-in-the-wool conservative that they can still make a good coalition of all the Republicans that are there to elect our own Speaker of the House instead of going to all the Democrats to make a Speaker of the House.
Okay. All right. Okay. Now, you were telling me earlier also you've already been a little bit busy, and I'll tell you what, let's take a quick break and thank the folks who let us come on here Saturday morning. When we get back, we're going to talk a little more about LCRA. We'll be right back. Thank goodness for all the great sponsors we have here at News from Camp House. HEB Food Stores, that's Stephen Tice at HEB. He helps me, he helps the community, he's a great man. I'm so thankful HEB loosened him up, lets him go around and sponsor a few things. HEB's got all your food needs. It's the greatest food store we got here in Columbus. Thank goodness for HEB. First State Bank, you go over to the First State Bank, they'll take care of all your loans, all your deposits, your savings, anything you need. Bunch of great hometown people over there. You got Celia Tobias, John Pollock, everybody over there is looking out for you. Miss Barbara Barta. It's a great bunch of folks at the First State Bank is also sponsoring News from the Camp House. First State Bank takes care of all my business. Baumgart Agency, Susan Baumgart at the Baumgart Agencies, her and Germania. She told me to plug Germania. Germania is an insurance that she likes everybody to know about. The Baumgart Agencies. Miss Susan and I are classmates, being classmates. She got me out of high school, sat right beside her, put us in alphabetical order where I could copy. And Susan Baumgart over at the Baumgart Agency taking care of all your insurance needs. Lyco Realty, one of the original sponsors of News from the Camp House. Lyco Realty, the oldest real estate company in the county, and for the last 3 years voted the favorite realtor in the county. Lyco Realty, that's Miss Kimberly Johnson, that's Crockett's granddaughter. More kinfolks and classmates and great people from Colorado County. People from Colorado County helping people from Colorado County. That's great. Oh, thank goodness for all these wonderful people come to me want to be sponsors for news from the camp house. Good morning and welcome to the second half of this week's news from the camp house. We're here this morning with the Republican candidate for House District 85 State Representative, State House Chair, Mr. Dennis Geeseman. He prefers to be called Goose. And now I ended the first half saying we're going to talk a little bit more about LCRA. In a previous interview, we had discussed about possibly trying to introduce elected officials to the LCRA Board. I think it's one of the only river authorities in Texas that doesn't have anyone elected on their board. They're all appointed by the governor. Now, and part of the stuff, there's no argument. LCRA is here to control the river. The question, what is always questionable, is why do we have a state entity competing with private enterprise in the electric business? That part don't make sense. Building high lines, wholesale electricity, got the Hyatt Regency over there in Bastrop. None of this really makes sense. Understand controlling the river. Understand trying to maintain water sources. Okay, and at the same time, at the power plant, we have to have restrictions. I'm going to inject a phrase that we need to hear a whole lot more, and that would be public trust. All your business has to maintain, and everything you should gain public trust. And so if you're going to do that, what is it? Public trust. Public trust what you're doing, whether it's environmentally, whether it's financially, whatever you're doing, you got to maintain public trust. Now, that's a big old mouthful. I'm going to let you run with that.
I think that's absolutely true. And what we see is there's too many cases where there's no elected input to these entities. That goes all the way from the Secretary of State in Texas, who makes decisions about elections and how elections are run. And she's appointed, or the current lady is appointed by the governor. And you can go right on down the line to, you can take that over to federal judges that are appointed for life. And if you don't have some elected input, the same thing goes with the LCRA Board. Having at least moving some elected officials on there gives the people some idea of accountability. And one example I'll use for accountability that affects both Colorado County, Fayette County, and somewhat in Austin County is the Fayette County Power Plant, which is the old coal-fired plant that's been in operation for a long time. And because it provides continuous baseload energy, it's being taxed harder and harder and harder, in my opinion, to make up for the intermittent energy that we're subsidizing, which it doesn't make horse sense at all. So in actually pushing the plant harder and harder and harder, they've also been trying to relax these standards for emissions. And now that doesn't make sense at all. Specifically, the testing of the ground and the groundwater. For example, selenium is a byproduct of burning coal, and all the fly ash that's stacked up after when they clean out the plant and stacked up outside, and when the rainwater runs into it, it seeps into the ground soil. And so they're asking in the current change in rules, to eliminate testing for selenium. Now, selenium in a minor quantity is something that's considered an antioxidant. You look at your vitamin pills and some of the shots they give to your livestock, there is some amount of selenium, and it's good, but it quickly goes to a toxic level if it's too much. So that's something that needs to be tested. And as we're cranking up the effort of a continuous baseload power plant with the technology from the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, I think instead of relaxing the standards, we need to have higher standards to make sure that it's not putting out bad stuff into the creeks, which eventually flows into the Colorado River.
All right, it's public trust. We have to know that the technology is there. We know we have the technology. We can keep this thing running right, keep it running clean, we have to maintain public trust. I always said, and I get off subject, get off track too quick. Bless their heart. That power plant gave jobs to generations of guys my age and a little bit older, and a whole bunch of them a whole lot younger. Bless their heart. Gave jobs to a whole bunch of these country boys who otherwise weren't going to go to college, weren't going to, and I appreciate that. In retrospect, I also say, how do you know private enterprise wouldn't have done the same thing? The private company could have done just exactly the same thing. But I'll give them credit. I say, bless their heart for that. Now, it's a pity that, like you said, they're being taxed so hard on account of all these windmills and solar energy that don't amount to a hill of nothing. But, we have to keep the public trust. We can't let we can't let selenium or anything else get away from us here. We got to keep the operation running clean.
And I think really the thing that piqued interest, especially up in the LaGrange area around the Fayette County Power Plant, is that they basically refused to do a public hearing explaining the relaxing in standards, and that's where transparency is just that's the key. I mean, if there's a good explanation, bring it and let me hear it.
Okay. All right. No, that's it. That's it. Exactly. There was no public hearing on this. There should have been a public hearing on this. There could have been a public hearing on this. It didn't happen. And you must maintain the public trust. You can't buy people off all the time. You got to maintain public trust. So, all right. Okay. What else? There's other things. There's so many things that go on budget wise. We always, being from the outdoor industry, we always try to stand behind Texas Parks and Wildlife. But when you're looking at the budget and you're saying, this thing might be just out of control, sometimes, what is hard and what is not hard, what's conservative and what's liberal when it comes to some of these agencies and just slowing them down a little bit on their spending.
Just in general, the mindset, we've got to get things under control. It's just the answer has always been, okay, yes, we'll do that. I'll step right back to some of the amendments we did to the Constitution the previous election. 3 of those items on the Constitution were for funding things out of the Constitution. To me, that sounds like an abdication of general responsibility of the legislature. Mm-hmm. That stuff should be put in the budget where it's reviewed every 2 years. The budget from the 88th legislature, which was not this last one, but the one before, started out at $250 billion. And it ended up at the end of the 89th legislature, just a little more than 2 years later, at $352 billion. And so just looking at that on its surface, in a matter of 3 years, the state budget went up 40%. That's just not conservative.
All right. So it's, what they're going to say. If you go to some of these senators that have been sitting there for 20 years, they're going to ask what to cut. They're going to say, well, okay, what are you going to cut? It's the same thing. When you ask a legislator, a rep, or a senator, or whoever, and a constituent asks the question, how are we going to eliminate property taxes, or how are we going to cut the budget? And they turn right around and ask the question back to us. That's not our job. That's not, that's what we elected state reps and senators to do, to keep it in control, to keep our taxes down, to have less government. And that's the job. That's not for us to answer those questions.
Yeah, the job is not just to always say yes. Going into the 88th legislature, there was like a $27 billion. Glenn Hagar was the comptroller, said, okay, we have a $27 billion surplus going into the 88th legislature. It all got spent on new or expanded programs. Mm-hmm. Going into the 89th legislature, it was about $24 billion. And then when they went into the extended session, They've found him almost another $27 billion, and that all got spent in new or expanded programs. So just some sort of a baseline budgeting where you say, this is what you had last year, and justify any increase. It should be basically no more than the rate of inflation.
All right. Okay. That's a way of looking at it. Okay. You've got a gentleman, and now we're all wondering about what can he actually do? You got a new comptroller now. He's going to run in there and try to play Doge like they did in Washington. I don't know if he can even do that. I think that was a bunch of campaign promises, but people are watching. People want to know.
Mr. Huffines is in there now and is inbound, and I think he'll sweep in there quickly. And I've talked to him several times. I think because he ran against Governor Abbott and there's no love lost between the two of them, I think he's willing to go in there with a knife and start green eye shades, magnifying glass, and a knife. I think he's ready to go in there and do that, and we need that.
Okay. All right. Okay. Anything you want to add?
Well, I think one of the main reasons I wanted to run is I see the uniparty in Austin, and we need to get back to conservative values, because I feel like Texas is the last stand. I feel like I hear people say all the time, we need to save Western civilization. I'm a bit of a contrarian. I don't think we need to save Western civilization like the old Western Europe. And Western Europe is, in many ways, submitted to the left and to the Islamic ideas. So American civilization is what we need to save, which is different than European civilization. From the very beginning, American civilization was about the value of the individual, and the value of the individual versus the monarchy or the oligarchy or the House of Lords or the royal family. So that's what we need to get back to, is the value of each individual and his ability to have the right to say something. And then contrarian again, I say that when people say, well, the American Revolution was 250 years ago, I say, no, it wasn't. We're in the middle of the American Revolution, and I hope it goes on for another 250 years. Thanks.
All right. Goose, thank you. That's good stuff. Okay. That's our Republican candidate for State House District 85. Okay, Mr. Goose Geeseman. Folks, I hope you learned something this morning. Got a little information you can carry with you and figure things out a little bit. And maybe we can do this again somewhere in the future, not too far off. All right. Now, this weekend's edition was also brought to us by the Shaw's Bend Social Club, country club for folks who don't have a country club. Good deal. Go out, have a big weekend, have lots of fun, be safe, and y'all just remember, pretty much any day is sure a good day to be out in the woods.